In this lesson, we are going to cover a lot of things, so prepare yourself, take a deep breath and just be patient. A lot of people give up while trying to figure out how block, layout, template relationship actually works in Magento, but after spending some time on it, you'll find it not that hard and even interesting. Let's start with layouts. As we have been discussing in controller section, in layout loading time, the system generates layout handles for the request, then scan all layout files found in a theme. Actually, most often it will fall down to default theme in base package to get all necessary layout updates, and then merge all nodes from matching layout handles starting from page XML. Then, in the rendering time, the system reads the layout tree and do what it needs to do, so we end up with completely rendered page. Let's examine what we have in page XML file. To master layouts, you must first understand the concept of a block, because as you scroll down, you can notice that there are a lot of block nodes here. In Magento, a block is simply a container for something. It can contain other blocks or the content itself. Take a look at this block here. It has 4 very important attributes: type, name, output, and template. Type defines the block class name. Remember when we talked about instantiating Magento core classes using factory methods? This is the same. That's why we use type attribute. You specify a block alias defined in config XML to get a class group prefix, and as a second portion, you provide a string which will complete the block class name. In this case, this will be translated to mage, page, block, HTML. So the system will exactly know what block to instantiate. And by the way, this is a special block type in Magento which defines the root block. All other blocks are children blocks. Name is a unique identifier of the block in the layout. The value set here can be used somewhere else in layout to make a reference to this block. Referencing allows us to do interesting things like appending content to the block or removing content from the block, but more on that later. For now, just remember that every block must have a name as well as type attribute, or it just won't be registered in the system. So don't forget to specify these 2 attributes when creating a block. Now, if any block element has an output attribute, then it is considered as an output block. Only the output blocks are automatically rendered. In Magento's default theme, and probably in all other themes, the root is defined as an output block, meaning that page rendering starts with it. And finally, template attribute defines the actual PHTML file to be used for rendering this block. This is one way how we connect block to template. Another way would be in the block class directly, which we'll also see later in this lesson. So in this case, page/3columns.phtml file is used, and that's the answer why we had this template file as the most outer block in the previous lesson when we were inspecting elements using template path hints. Let's check that file. I'll go to Templates folder, then Page, and here it is. Looks very clean. Basically, it's a plain HTML with a couple of PHP method calls. The first very important rule you should remember is that in a template, this refers to the corresponding block class, which is in this case, as we know from layout, mage, page, block, HTML. They even left the comment here to let you know what this refers to, but in the case when no comment is available, you can always find the block class simply by calling PHP native function getClass. And I'll insert it into a die to clearly see the class name. This is the method I always use when working with some template file and not sure what block it corresponds to. I'll go back to my browser, and yeah, we successfully verified it's indeed that class. Now, really amazing things can be done by calling getChildHTML method, which allows you to include the contents of children blocks inside of a parent block. I'll go back to the page XML. We have this top-level root block, which acts as a parent, and a couple of children blocks nested directly inside of it. So head, after body start, global notices, header, left, content, right. These are all direct children of root block. These blocks are also called structural blocks. Now in root template, by calling getChildHTML and passing block name as an argument, you can include and render the content of that child block. And what's interesting is that children blocks can be parents of another blocks. For example, header block has a couple of children blocks, and even the children blocks are also parents to some other blocks. And all of them will be rendered recursively by calling this getChildHTML with header passed as an argument. If I comment that out and refresh the page in the browser, we see that the whole header has gone away. But this is where people get tricked. I don't want you to think that getChildHTML does some magic and automatically renders everything inside of header block. No, not really. It will render only a corresponding template to this header block, and then in that template you'll find instructions for rendering header children blocks. That is built in the same way using a couple more getChildHTML method calls, one which renders top links, the second that renders store language, the third top many, and so on. You get the idea. Now the question is, how the system knows what is the template for header block? It's not specified in layout XML like we had above with the root block. It must be defined somewhere. And that's what I thought a couple of minutes ago when I said that templates can be set directly in the block classes. Let me show you that. So we have a block specified with page/HTML header. This means that it will definitely be defined in page module, and this HTML header is a file path telling the system that inside of blocks folder there will be HTML folder and header.php file inside. Let me go to that location. So page, HTML, and yes, here is header.php. And if I open that, we'll see in constructor setTemplate method, which sets the relative path to the corresponding template file. I say relative because whatever the current theme is, it will go into its template folder and then page/HTML and try to find header.html. And if there's no such file, it will fall down regarding to the fallback model we discussed. To be totally honest, I'm not sure why they decided to set template this way and not in layout directly. You can comment this out and add template attribute with the same path in layout, and it will still work without any problems. But it's good we had this example so you can see that template can be set from both XML and PHP code by calling setTemplate method. And now let's open that template file to see what we have there. I'll go to Templates, Page, HTML, and open Header template. These getChildHTML calls are what I wanted to show you. So, as we said, top links, language picker, main navigation, and other children block of header block are not rendered by calling this getChildHTML with header as an argument in the root template. That line will render only header template file, but in order to render header's children blocks, we need to call getChildHTML inside of header template and pass relevant child block name. And that's how Magento is designed to work. Blocks, calling other blocks, all the way down, until the whole page is rendered. You'll get familiar with this very soon. Now, the blocks we covered here are blocks that extend from mage, core, block, template. And the majority of blocks defined in the layout are of type or subtype of core template block. When you build your custom blocks, you'll also need to extend from that block, but it doesn't mean that's the only important core block type. For example, left, content, and right blocks, which are actually structural blocks for the left, middle, and right area of the site, belong to core text list block. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because these blocks don't use templates. And what's even more important, their children blocks are rendered without having to call getChildHTML at all. That's why we are able to assign any block to right, left, or content, and it's automatically rendered, as we'll see in a minute. What I didn't understand in my Magento beginning, for example, is how do we get the content on the left, middle, and right columns? Where the banner or poll came from? If we go back to page XML, there's no some children blocks indicating what files should we look at. And if we comment this, Let's see what the result is in the browser. Whole left column goes away. But what if I want to remove only the poll, or add something below or above it? How to accomplish that? A lot of questions are raised, so it's time to introduce a new, very important and useful layout element called reference. You can find reference element everywhere in these layout files, and I decided to open tag.xml to demonstrate how referencing works in the system. So tag.xml is a layout update from Mage tag module. Here we have reference name equals left. By making a reference to another block, and in this case it's left, you're able to modify its content. The inserted tag/popular block, which has its markup defined in popular.phtml. That template can be found in templates/tag folder, and you notice another convention here. Folders are named in the way to correspond to the module name they belong to. I'll open this file, and there's no any getChildHTML method call. We said every content added to left, content or right blocks will be automatically rendered. Watch what happens when I comment this out. As expected, it disappeared. So the reference tag is used to target already defined block in order to insert or remove blocks or perform some actions. Before moving to actions, I think it's worth repeating this once again. Always be aware of the fact that page.xml is loaded first. It defines main structural blocks like head, header, left, content, right, and footer, and then other modules are able to access those structural areas and change them by adding new blocks, removing existing ones, applying some actions on them, and so on. And maybe you've noticed, both blocks and references will always be defined in layout handles, because that's the point. There will be some cases when you'd like to have some block, for example tag block, on every single page. That's why it is under default layout handle. As we saw, default layout handle is generated on every single request. On the other hand, what if you want it to appear only on this page? If so, it's very simple to achieve by putting this reference block inside of tats+ demo index say hello handle, and the system will render it only on our page. Now, actions are another very common element in layout used for calling block methods. For example, in page.xml under head block, we have a lot of action nodes followed by method attribute. This attribute value is actually a method name in page/html head block, and the value passed here will be included inside of HTML head tags. I guess you've never seen something similar before, but calling PHP block methods from layout.xml is a really useful feature. For your assignment, go to Mage, Page, Block, HTML, open head.php from there and search for methods like add.js or add.css. You'll definitely find them there. Alright, I think we really covered a lot of things, but still there are a lot of other things to cover. It's really impossible to understand all at once, but as I said, be patient and review this lesson a couple of times. With a little bit of practice, you'll notice how easy it actually is. So, see you in the next hands-on lesson.